The photograph was hidden inside a small wooden box that had belonged to her grandmother. Emily had never seen the box before. She found it on the evening after her grandmother was buried. The old house was almost completely silent. Train tapped against the windows while Emily searched through drawers looking for important family papers. Then she noticed a loose piece of wood beneath the bottom drawer. She pulled it away. Behind it was the small wooden box. There was no lock. Inside were several old letters and one photograph wrapped carefully in faded cloth. Emily picked up the photograph. At first she saw an old house surrounded by trees. Then she saw the people standing in front of it. Their grandmother was there. She was much younger. Beside her stood a woman Emily had never seen before, and in the woman's arms was a little girl. Emily stared at the child. Her heart began beating faster. The little girl had the same dark eyes, same small nose, the same strange expression Emily saw every morning when she looked into her own mirror. Emily turned the photograph over. There was a date written on the back, June 14, 2001. Emily Frazee. She had been born in November 2002. For several seconds she could not move. She looked at the photograph again. The little girl could have been her. At someone who looked like her. Emily ran upstairs and searched through the old family albums. She found her birth certificate. She found photographs from her first birthday. She found hospital records. Everything said the same thing. She had been born in November 2002, but the photograph in her hand showed a child who looked exactly like her standing outside her grandmother's house more than a year earlier. Then Emily noticed something else written beneath the date were 5 words. Must never see this. Emily felt a coldness move through her. She looked toward the dark hallway. For the first time that night she wondered if her grandmother had not hidden the photograph because she wanted to forget the past. Maybe she had hidden it because she was afraid Emily would discover the truth, and somewhere inside that old house Emily had been waiting 17 years for her to find it. Emily spent the entire night staring at the photograph. In the morning she had convinced herself that there had to be another explanation. Perhaps the date was wrong. Perhaps the girl was someone else. Perhaps the photograph had been placed inside the box by mistake. But when Emily returned to the old house after breakfast, she found something that destroyed every one of those explanations. Wooden box contained another photograph. As one showed the same little girl sitting on the front step. Her grandmother was sitting beside her. The girl was holding a red toy rabbit. Emily remembered that Rabbit had owned one exactly like it when she was a child. She still had it somewhere in her parents' house. Emily turned the photograph over. There was another message. Her name was not Emily. She was born with another name. Emily dropped the photograph. For a moment she could not breathe. She began searching through every drawer in her grandmother's bedroom. Bend an old wardrobe. She found a small envelope. Inside was a hospital bracelet. Name written on it was Lilith. Date was June 14, 2001. Emily sat on the floor. Date was exactly the same as the first photograph. She suddenly remembered something her grandmother used to say whenever Emily asked about her mother. Some questions are safer when they remain unanswered. Emily had always thought it was an old woman's way of avoiding painful memories. No, she understood that it had been a warning. She searched the house until she found an old diary. Final pages had been torn out, but one sentence remained on the last page. If Emily ever finds the photograph, tell her that I tried to protect her. Emily began crying. Her grandmother had known this day would come. Then she heard a noise downstairs. Emily slowly walked toward the staircase. A man was standing inside the front door. Was old. His hair was completely white. Looked at Emily for several seconds. Then his face changed. Whispered one name. Lily. Emily could not speak. The man stepped closer, looked at the photograph in her hand. Then he said something that made the whole mystery even more frightening. Your mother has been looking for you for 17 years. Emily stared at the stranger. She wanted to believe he was lying, but the sadness in his eyes made that impossible. The man introduced himself as Daniel. Told Emily that he had known her grandmother for many years. She had also known the woman in the photographer name was Sarah. Sarah was Emily's real mother. Daniel explained that Sarah had given birth to a baby girl on June 14, 2001. The baby had been named Lily, but only a few weeks later something terrible happened. Sarah became seriously ill. She was unable to care for her daughter. Emily's grandmother had taken Lily away. She told Sarah that the child would be safer with another family. Sarah believed her, but Daniel said that was not the truth. Sarah recovered when she returned to the house. She discovered that Lily was gone. She searched everywhere. She begged Emily's grandmother to tell her where her daughter had been taken, but the old woman refused. Years passed. Said Sarah never stopped searching. She sent letters, she visited hospitals, searched. Record she even hired people to find her daughter, but every trail ended at the same place. Emily could barely listen. She asked Daniel why her grandmother had done this. Daniel looked down because someone wanted Lily to disappear. Emily felt fear rise inside her. Daniel handed her another photograph. It showed her grandmother standing beside a man Emily had never seen before. The man looked wealthy and powerful. Daniel said his name was Richard. Richard had been part of the family, wanted custody of Lily because he believed she would inherit a large amount of money. One day Emily suddenly understood her grandmother had not simply hidden her identity, she had hidden her from Samina. Daniel told her that Sarah had finally discovered where Lily was living. She had learned that the little girl had been renamed Emily. She wanted to meet her, but before she could reach her, Richard found her. Sarah was forced to disappear again. Emily looked at Daniel with tears in her eyes. Then she asked the question she had been afraid to ask, "Where's my mother now?" Daniel reached into his coat, took out a letter. The envelope had Emily's name on it. The handwriting was old, but the first sentence made Emily stop breathing. "Me dearest Lily, if you are reading this, and your grandmother is finally gone, and now you are old enough to know why I never stopped looking for you." Emily read the letter slowly. Every word seemed to open another door into a life she had never known. Sarah explained that she had never abandoned her daughter. She had been forced to leave. She had been told that if she tried to take Lily back, Richard would destroy the family. Sarah had spent years trying to protect her daughter from a distance. She watched Emily grow. She knew about her school. She knew about her birthday. She even knew about the little red rabbit Emily carried everywhere as a child, but she never approached her because she believed that staying away was the only way to keep her alive. Emily could barely see the words through her tears. Then she reached the final page. Sarah had written an address. Emily looked at Daniel, told her that Sarah was still alive. She was living in a small seaside town several hours away. Emily wanted to leave immediately. Before she could move, Daniel stopped her. There was one more thing she needed to know. Richard was still alive. He had recently discovered that Emily had found the photographs. Emily felt the fear return. Why would he care now? Daniel explained that the inheritance her grandmother had protected was still in Emily's name. Richard had spent years trying to gain control of it, but the money was never the real reason. Richard had wanted control over the family, had wanted to erase Sarah because she knew what he had done. Emily suddenly remembered the old photograph again. There was something strange in the background. A small child's bicycle was leaning against the house. Daniel looked at it. That bicycle belonged to Sarah. Emily asked why it mattered. Daniel told her that the photograph had been taken on the morning Sarah was forced to leave. She had asked Emily's grandmother for one final photograph with her baby. Photograph Emily now held was that final moment. Sarah had believed she would never see her daughter again, but her grandmother had secretly kept the photograph perhaps because even after everything she knew the truth would eventually find its way home. Emily folded the letter. She looked at Daniel. Then she made her decision. She was going to find her mother, but as she stepped outside, a black car was waiting across the road. The driver was watching the house, and Daniel knew exactly who it belonged to. Richard had found her. Emily did not run. For 17 years she had lived with questions she never knew how to know. She finally had the answer. She looked at the black car, then she looked at the old photograph in her hand. She understood something. The photograph was never meant to frighten her, it was meant to lead her home. Daniel helped Emily leave through the back entrance. They drove through the rain toward the seaside town for hours. Emily said nothing. She held the photograph against her chest. When they finally reached the small cottage, Emily saw a woman standing by the window. The woman looked older than she had expected. Her hair was gray, her face was tired, but when she saw Emily, she knew immediately. Sarah opened the door. Neither of them spoke. Emily simply walked forward. Sarah began crying. She reached out slowly as if she was afraid Emily might disappear. Then Emily stepped into her arms for the first time in 17 years. She was holding her real mother. Sarah whispered that she was sorry. Emily told her that she did not need to apologize. It had spent enough years believing she had been abandoned. No, she knew the truth. He sat together for hours. Sarah told Emily about the years she had missed, showed her old letters, birthday cards she had written but never sent, photographs she had kept hidden, in a small red rabbit. Emily stared at it. It was the same rabbit from the photograph. Sarah had kept it all those years. Next morning, Daniel brought news that Richard had been reported to the police after attempting to enter the old family house. The truth was finally coming into the light. Emily returned to her grandmother's house. Several weeks later, she placed the old photograph inside the wooden box, but this time she did not hide it. She left it on the table beside it. She placed a new photographone of herself standing beside Sarah. 2 generations that had been separated by a secret finally together. Emily understood why the photograph had survived all those years. It was proof that love could be hidden. Ellie hadn't even broken, but it could never truly disappear. She closed the box, and for the first time in her life she no longer wondered who she was. She knew she was Lily, she was Emily, and she was finally home. If this story touched your heart, stay with us for more emotional stories about secrets, lost families, and second chance, because sometimes the truth takes years to find us, but when it finally does, it can lead us exactly where we were always meant to be.